Do us a favor, hit the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share. What's up, Play and Trade Guitars? This is John, and I'm here with an off-the-bench demo of this 70s made in Japan, Wilshire-ish. I say Wilshire-ish because it's a made in Japan model ET-290. Very much like its American cousin, the Epiphone Wilshire. This was produced in the 70s at the Matsumoko factory in Japan, and it's got some real funky features we'll talk about. I'll tell you what, it sent me on a soul journey, it sent me on a spiritual journey, it sent me on a technical journey, it sent me on all kinds of journeys, tearing this thing apart and putting it back together. Some real unique choices in terms of construction, and I use unique in the friendly sense. Took this thing apart, cleaned it up, and put it back together. It is a total rock machine. It's a real resonant piece of beautiful vintage wood, bolt-on neck, steel adjustable neck made in Japan. This was made for the Japanese market at the Matsumoko factory in Japan. The Wilshire was played by many notable players, everyone from Jimi Hendrix to Bruce Springsteen to Jeff Tweedy to Johnny Winter. This is the closely related Japanese cousin that was made in the 70s when they shifted production from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Japan. And it's got some great features and it's got some really terrible features, and we'll talk about all of them. I want to give a quick shout out to Chris Wilde, who's a guitar player who turned us on to the fact that this is not actually a Wilshire, but it is in fact an Epiphone ET-290 made in Japan. He plays one himself, so shout out and thank you for the technical knowledge. I'm always loving to crowdsource what you all know about the guitars that we're here to play. Moving from the butt on up, we've got a beautiful red burst finish, and we've got hardware which all used to be gold, and something really cool. It's old enough that all the gold has flaked off, but in a consistent pattern, which is really charming, and it's got a lot of vintage mojo. So you can see the chrome or the pot metal or whatever this is, nickel underneath, I'm not sure, all showing through what used to be gold. We've got a three-way pickup selector right here on the right horn, and then we've got volume and tone controls for each of the two pickups, and we've got this bolt-on neck. And you look at this and you go, okay, it's just a bolt-on neck. They got a little crazy with this one, so it does a little bit of a disappearing act. Focus here on the neck joint. It's a bolt-on neck, but here's the mystery, right? The bolt-on neck appears to end right here at the joint, yet here's the bolt-on screws. So where does the neck actually go? They've got kind of a carpenter's joint, a piece of wood that protrudes into the body and actually goes underneath the pick guard, which caused me much turmoil and much stress, goes underneath this neck pickup. Now, it seemed like a good idea, I'm sure in theory, but it causes all sorts of issues. These screws on the back, these two, which coincide with the position of this neck pickup, actually protrude through that carpenter's joint and bump into the back of this neck pickup. Interesting choice of design, to say the least. It causes kind of A and B must be in place before C can be reassembled problem if you're taking it apart and putting it back together. We got it all sorted out. It's just fine now. But man, it gave me moments of sheer panic, taking it apart and putting it back together. And it was a bit of a head scratcher in terms of why they chose that construction method and why they chose to put the neck on the way they did. But we got it sorted out. The neck joint sits comfortably underneath this neck pickup. The screws bump right up into the neck pickup, in fact. And then we've got the pickup rings screwed down with 4 screws, and we've got this really, really cool Epiphone pickguard, which wraps all the way from underneath the fretboard all the way over to the right horn and all the way down and around, wrapping under the controls. I love this vintage Epiphone logo, which is here between the pickup. I think it's really sharp. And body-wise, if you looked at this, you'd go, oh, it's a Wilshire. And it's true, the same shape. But actually, quite a bit of this guitar is an amalgamation of the Wilshire and just a purely standalone model, the ET-290, which are produced in Japan. The headstock, if we drop down and look at the headstock, this headstock is not going to look like the classic Epiphone Wilshire, which looks almost more like a modified, almost like a Strat headstock. Definitely a different look for Epiphone. So if you see any notable players, anybody from Jimi Hendrix to Jeff Tweedy to Johnny Winter to Bruce Springsteen mentioned as players of the Epiphone Wilshire, the body will very much look like this guitar, but the headstock will look entirely different. This is a made-for-Japanese market guitar that Epiphone did, and they did a nice job. They just have some quirky design points which you just need to be aware of if you're going to take the guitar apart. Now, if the guitar is in good shape, there's not really a need to take it apart, but of course on the bench we disassemble it and we take a close look at all of the components to make sure everything's nice and clean. Now that it's put together, I've really enjoyed playing the guitar. The action is nice and comfortable. I didn't need to adjust the truss rod, but I did go ahead and just raise up the saddle here. And I have 10 gauge strings on here with now what I consider to be very comfortable action. And I want to have the action high enough that I can really take advantage of how resonant this piece of wood is. So it's fantastic. From a playing standpoint, let me actually put the amp on standby, and I'm going to let you just hear how resonant this piece of wood is. So this is just the guitar all by itself, and you can get a taste of what it is we're talking about here. Just the resonant piece of wood, it's got that really working in its favor. It's got a nice straight neck. I had no issues with the truss rod. I had no issues with anything else. It's constructed well, and I'm sure there was a method to the madness. It's just, it causes a few headaches when you take it apart, as you saw on the bench. But now that I've got it off the bench, listen, don't take it apart again, just play the thing. That's the main thing on playing trade guitars. We want to play the guitars. And now that I put myself through the headache of taking it apart and putting it back together, all I really want to do is play the guitar. So let's kick on the amp and let's get back to what we mainly do, which is play guitars. And let's check out the jangly vintage vibes of this Epiphone ET-290 Wilshire cousin. And it's just really satisfying guitar to play, really fun. We got some crackle in there. So this is another construction headache. Another construction headache of this guitar is that they chose to use mini pots that are very much sealed up. So when you take off the faceplate, you're going to encounter pots which are very hard to get out with contact cleaner. So this guitar is probably deserving of another round of contact cleaner. It meant enough after the first round of On the Bench. Maybe we'll need a second round of On the Bench. We'll see. I mean, if you're playing the guitar and get it dialed in where you want it, it's not a problem. With this price range and the way this guitar was constructed, it's one of those vintage rock monsters where you find a sound you like for a purpose that you require, and you turn it on, you leave it, and you play it there. You should not be expecting too much finagling with the controls while you play this guitar. The age of this guitar is going to cause some crackling and some hiccups here and there. But if you dial in a tone you like, it's good to go. There's no issues. Here's my verdict on the cousin of the Epiphone Wilshire, the Japanese-made ET-290 MIJ version of the Wilshire. Fun, funky, vintage vibe, cool guitar to play. Not one I'm probably going to rely on in the studio. One that you could take out and totally rock in the garage with a loud band. Crank out a lot of good rock tones, a lot of jangly rock tones, pop and rock. Not one I'm going to trust in the studio, too noisy, a little bit too unreliable. But in terms of an overall good sound, I'm not going to fault it. I'm definitely going to give it a thumbs up in terms of its overall sound and the feel of its neck. We have a bound neck here, which is just fantastic and beautiful. I love the aging, everything from the aging of the actual finish in wood to my favorite part, which is probably the flaking off of the gold finish on all of the hardware. So all the hardware has lost its gold fleck. I think that's awesome. I think the stylings and the finish are just eye-catching and gorgeous. My negatives of this guitar is the construction method of the bolt-on neck is just ridiculous. The way that these screws bump into the neck pickup and cause problems in reassembling the guitar is just silly. There's just some oddball choices with it. Overall, I mean, the details are beautiful. I can't fault it. So thanks for taking a close look with us at this Epiphone ET-290, cousin of the Wilshire. I've enjoyed playing it. It's a really cool sounding guitar. It's definitely required some attention on the bench, and we gave it that, and it's now set up with D'Addario 10-gauge strings, and it's really singing. I'm John for Plain Trade Guitars. Thanks for looking at this Epiphone Wilshire ET-290 with me. Stay tuned for more off-the-bench, high-definition guitar demonstrations. Glad you could be here with us. Drop a comment. Let us know what you think of this guitar. How does it sound to you? Do us a favor. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share. We'll see you all soon. Thanks for being here.